notice of repairs? We talked about this.
Yeah, it was just something that, or, right? It was the agrees or addendum.
Yes. So there's two parts of this. They added or, which I really thought they had that there before, but
Oh, yeah, that
You
was
know,
me.
either or,
Who was that?
right?
That was me.
So,
Good catch.
Well,
yeah,
I paid $6,000 because I didn't see the order
so
in repairs.
something that we were talking about this, right? And so let's go through and
Or it was
Let's-
at the end of it, not not its own line, so I had them change it to their own line, because it was not.
Claire,
Oh, I see.
it was right, yeah.
It was
So
there,
it
we
was on
just
the
moved
line,
it
you
down.
moved it down.
let's talk about real quick, just notice repairs and kind of like the order in which
That was
things will end up flowing if you're gonna go through and do an addendum to the notice of repairs. Right? So, one of the things that Jason was saying is, there's some people who are going through and even on the notice of repairs are doing an addendum to the offered acceptance. Right? So if you're doing an addendum to the notice of repairs, it needs to be noted as an addendum to the notice of repairs. So they give a laundry list, then they have addendum 1, which gives the rest of the laundry list so you can actually read it, right? And then you're gonna come back and you're gonna say, hey, look, instead of doing those repairs, we're gonna give you $5,000, right? Will you take $5,000? Yeah, no problem, we'll take $5,000. So now you're gonna do an addendum to the notice of repairs and their addendum, and you're gonna put like credit. So buyer and seller hereby agree, in lieu of repairs, we're gonna offer a credit of $5,000. But you don't want to share that with the lender. So now you're gonna have to do another addendum to the offer and acceptance, which is showing that you're gonna do a seller credit towards recurring and non-recurring closing costs for $5,000.
Does
So
that make
it's-
sense to
Does that make sense?
In that scenario, you have an addendum to the NOR and an
There's
addendum.
two.
Yep.
two-
Okay, because I feel like I've ever done like a seller credit. Let's say there's already a credit,
Yeah,
typical
yeah.
buyer wants 2.5% towards their recurring, non-recurring, do a buy down.
Right.
And then there's a credit for repairs. There's usually a question of like, oh, is this in addition to the already existing
So-
credit?
So-
You're gonna
so
spell that out go
And
ahead,
it-
go ahead.
So if you have that credit, right, and
Yeah,
you're showing a
so it's like
2.5%
in
credit,
addition to
and now
the
you're doing this,
5,000.
right? So what I would typically do is basically come back, do an addendum and just, go to, offer and acceptance, page 8, line, whatever. In addition to,
The
The
two.
original.
in addition to the 2.5,
Total
buyer and
credit.
seller hereby agree, an additional $5,000 plus that 2.5. And I always try to then break it down into dollars and cents. I always give a IE, right? If purchase price is $100,000 and 2.5 is this, and now this, then total credit is
And
this.
some
I feel like-
lenders will ask for that.
I feel like title then sees to addend, I feel like
Right.
it looks like does it not look like a duplicate to title?
Yeah,
Saying like,
so,
oh, you
so,
want another 5,000 on top of this?
yeah, so that's why you'll put that, you'll list out that, you'll identify the offer and acceptance of that, say, 2.5%.
Yeah,
And then you're saying, in addition to, we already identified this, in addition to that, we also are getting this for a total of,
For a total.
2.5 plus 5,000.
But if there was no
You
original
don't
one, and
think
then
that
you're,
already got
and then you're
the
creating an addendum to the original offer of acceptance, do you just on the addendum to the notice of required repairs, right, like to be noted in addendum to offer of acceptance?
Yeah,
dated
yep,
X,
yep.
Whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, Cool.
and
Yeah.
I see that.
You don't,
Like the
don't
lender is-
reference it on the, don't reference the addendums and the notice of required repairs on the.
Right, because now a lender,
The other way around. though.
'Cause in
On the-
theory-
On the addendum to the other required repairs, reference the
Yeah.
addendum that you're
No, I think
making
that's
to
great,
the
yeah.
offer of acceptance, just to clarify, these are the same.
so it's not, yeah, so
I've
it's-
had-
we were talking about that, so it's not a 5 and a 5 is
Yeah.
10.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Let me clarify this. So if you're representing the buyer, you fill out the notice of required repairs. Now, are you saying you also send out an addendum?
no,
I feel like
So-
that's happened to me a few times where the buyer's agent brings.
yeah. Oh, you'll see that all the time. Yeah, you'll see that all the time, right? So they're like, hey, here's this, we just want a credit, and you're like, hold on,
Yeah,
well, what are your repairs, right? So I'll always come back and be like, give me your repairs, we'll go through, we'll take a look at it, you might be asking for $5,000, I could get the stuff fixed for $500,
Right.
but in your world, it's $5,000.
they didn't list anything out and notice or required repairs. They just said, see addendum one. I was like.
Yeah,
Well, because depending on what the repair is, sometimes you want the seller to do it, sometimes the seller, you don't trust them because you've seen the rest of the house. And so,
never happened.
like like sometimes the buyer does just want the credit, they want to use their own people, like, I think everyone's on the same page about
Yep.
that. I've done like, we need to back up this number, I've done it in like the body of the email where I send it, like, here's how we got to this number. Cause I don't
Yeah.
want the lender seeing
Oh.
repairs at all costs, is that?
I think that's.
Uh,
I do
yeah,
that all the
okay,
time because
way
I
to
don't,
do it.
I don't want
Like,
to rely
let's
on
have
the
a-
seller to.
There's
Yeah.
Estimates.
I also.
Yeah.
Back up what you're asking.
But I also counsel my sellers that in the offer, it doesn't say nothing, it says nothing about a credit. That this is the
Yeah.
seller shall do repairs, nothing about a credit.
Still say
It's-
just no.
Right,
But
and I've
not
had sellers,
promising
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
fix that, I'll fix everything. So I've had that too, so that the offer doesn't say credit.
On the
So-
notice of repairs, like, as if I'm representing the seller, right? And I just got through this big, long, nasty negotiations, pissing match of like $5, right? I always tell my seller like, hey, I just want to be pretty straight up with you. Like, we can get an inspection report and they might list freaking every single thing on this inspection report. So there is a point where we don't want to kick each other's teeth out, right? So I'll always like talk to my sellers along that process. And then what I'll do is I'll just say, hey, let's just they put, in their offer and we're negotiating back and forth. I'll throw an addendum at the end that basically says, buyer and seller hereby agree, sellers to, or, repairs to be limited to, health, safety and wellness. Right?
Offer says that too.
Right? So that, I go through, I put that in there. That's all perspective,
It
right?
is.
Because what I consider health, somebody else doesn't.
Right.
But you try to follow like on the guidelines of FHA and VA, whatever it may be. And then what I'll do is I'll put a limitation. Not to be more than $2,000. Right?
You put that in the listing? Where do you put
I'll
that?
put that in addenda. If we're going through, Aaron, if we're back and forth, we're negotiating a deal. And, we're just
Counter.
adding, and we're counter offering. I'll throw an addendum in there to basically say, hey, I'm gonna limit you to health, safety and wellness into $2,000 unless major repairs are
Unless the
noted.
roof's falling in, yeah,
100%.
right, okay.
But if
Right?
it's an addendum, the buyer doesn't have to agree to that, right? Or is this an
No.
counter?
No, I'll include all of that coming across. Yeah. So, with a counter, whatever,
Oh, can I-
Yeah. just CYOA. Cause
Right,
I mean, I truly have gotten to the point where we negotiated so hard and they're like, any repairs? Nope.
Yeah.
I'm like.
Yep.
Well, hope that $500 was worth it,
Copy-paste the instructions
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah.